Join me today as we talk about possibly one of the most disappointing sequels ever made, Highlander 2, The Quickening. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name's Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. Considered by a lot of people to be one of the more disappointing sequels ever made. Now, some of you who've watched the channel here before are probably wondering, but Bob, how can you say that when you rant against the Star Wars sequels constantly? Well, I'll explain as we get into this. So, Highlander 2... briefly has Christopher Lambert returning as Connor McLeod, Sean Connery returning as Ramirez, which for those of you who watched the first movie, you should already have questions now. Actually, you should have had questions when I said Highlander 2, given how the first movie ended, but allow me to continue. And then Michael Ironside is our new villain. Sorry for the interruption here. I just wanted to make one potentially positive note about this movie. If you are going to watch this movie for reasons other than trying to figure out how on earth Highlander ever got a sequel, Michael Ironside's character is probably going to be the highlight of the movie for you. Connor's basically Connor and, you know, saving the world stuff, but Michael Ironside, I think he realized how ridiculous it was, and they just told him to cut loose, and he did. Has some of the better lines in the movie, similar to the Kurgan in the first movie. So, and it's kind of a trend in the Highlander movies. The villains are somewhat interesting or entertaining. But, yes, the highlight of his comments is definitely when they're at McLeod's wife's grave, and he imparts upon him the wise words of ashes to ashes, dust to dust. If you don't take it out and use it, it's going to rust. So, yeah, that's the kind of thing you can expect from him in this movie. He's very over the top. Now, I return you back to your normally scheduled program. And Virginia Madsen's in it as well. I don't know. The guy who runs the Shield Corporation, he's in... can't think of his name. He's in Scrubs. He's the one kind of jackass doctor. I didn't watch much of Scrubs, so I couldn't tell you his name. Sorry. But anyway, so like I said, you're probably wondering if you watched the first movie and somehow never saw any of the others. You're first probably wondering, how are there any others? Because the end of the first movie is a pretty definitive ending. Now, if you watch my video about the first one, you kind of know a little bit about what you're about to hear. But essentially, the first one was a major success. So like, hey, let's make another one. And, yeah, so they did. The consensus seems to be that they shouldn't have. So, this my explanation of the plot is actually going to largely depend on which version you watch. Because there's a major distinction between the regular cut and the director's cut. I think it's a director's cut. It's some kind of cut. It's the one that's on Amazon Prime. I know it's not the regular one. So I think it is the director's cut, because that's where I watched it. So, and I've seen both versions. So, either way, aside from the whole, like, hey, Connor was, you know, the one. You know, there can be only one, and it was him, and there's no more immortals, and now he's going to grow old and die. Well, they kind of stuck with that. He's old. He's about to die. But no, kind of not. The movie committed one of the cardinal sins of story structure in that it attempts to explain something that is best left unexplained. And that is, where do the immortals come from? Because you see, the first movie, Connor at one point just says, hey, it's a kind of magic. That's all you need to know for the plot. You don't actually need to know why they're here, where they come from, or anything like that. In fact, this is one of those plots that were like, the less you know about that kind of thing, the better. Because as the show demonstrates, I mean, there should just be more immortals constantly. Like, there probably never will just be one. You know? Like, which, I mean, great for storytelling, bad for parts of the narrative, because they're fighting for a prize they can never win. But you could also go with that, like, that's part of, like, dramatic irony, that they all think that there's a prize at the end of the tunnel, and there's no end of the tunnel, so... But anyway, which does lead one to wonder how they know about the prize. You know, who knows? Best not to look at Highlander 2 for your answers. So, here we go. In the regular version of the movie, they're aliens from the planet Zeist, if I remember right. And they, Connor, Ramirez, some of the others were rebels against General Katana, who is Michael Ironside's character. And they are banished to Earth. It's best if you don't question, like, what I'm about to explain here, because there's no answers. They're banished to Earth in such a way that they are reborn into mortal bodies, well, immortal bodies, and somehow wind up looking exactly the same and everything. Who knows how that works? Again, best left unexplained. I'm really surprised the movie didn't try to explain that part. Meanwhile, Katana later sends 2 of his goons, and then eventually himself, and they just show up as adults, like fully formed, weapons, everything, in the modern day of Highlander 2, which is in the future. I didn't check the date. I need to see if it's actually in the future anymore, or if it just was in the future of the 90s. So, they're sent there, and where they have to fight to the death till there's only one left. And then I watched the special edition, so I'll have to watch the regular version to see if this is true there. But I believe the idea is, when there's one of them left, part of the prize is they can return to their home world, and, like, their sentence is commuted because they survived the games on Earth. So, Katana gets tired of waiting for McLeod to die and sends 2 of his goons to kill him, because this is a really stupid move in either version of these events. Because if he's an alien on another planet, he's an immortal also. All he has to do is wait. Like, he's literally like at the last league. Like, McLeod is on his deathbed practically. He just has to wait for him to die. Like, he's an old man. He's decrepit. There are no other immortals. He's mortal. And he's clearly not going to return to Zeist. Unless it happens like on his deathbed, in which case Katana can just break the law and kill him when he gets there. I mean, the narrative behind this movie is stupid. Now, in the special edition, they're from the distant past of Earth. This one, I think, raises even more questions. Different questions, admittedly, but more. So again, you have that problem of they get sent into the future and are born and look just like they did in the past. Ramirez and Connor, in both versions, undergo some kind of magic ritual which binds them together. That's going to be important here in a minute. So, they... and now, this one, I know for sure mentioned this, because it also says that's what they've done to other criminals and rebels and everything else. So that explains the evil immortals who are wanting to kill all the other immortals to win the prize. You know, because it's kind of weird if you're like, so wait, the Kurgan was one of these guys, and the villain in the 3rd movie, and like the 4 horsemen from the original series, like, that doesn't make any sense. So you got to roll with like the fact that they would have been the criminals, the actual evil people, and it acknowledges that they're immortal, like General Katana. So sending them into the future, they can fight it out. When there's down to just one of them, then that one can choose to come back and live out their life. However, again, questions arise, like, let's say Connor would have made that choice and went back. But he's going back in time. And he's an immortal. So, like, he'll then live through the events that he lived through already at some point, as long as he didn't lose his head. So, like, that's nonsense. I don't even know where the hell they were going with that. But yet again, General Katana is an idiot. Because if he's in the past and he can see the future, he just has to hit the fast forward button to see Connor die. I mean, like if you're in the past and you can see the future, like, clearly you're not synced up in any way, shape, or form. So he didn't literally sit there for thousands of years watching all this play out. He's just watching the end. So anyway, he gets, again, I can't wait for nature to take its course. Let me send 2 of my goons. So from there on, the movie's basically the same after that. He sends 2 of his guys. Connor kills one of them. Comes out of the explosion young and healthy again, because he just killed another immortal. Then he kills the other one. And then General Katana shows up, and he's like, look, I was ready to die. I was going to cash in my chips. I was old, but now I'm immortal again. I'm back to square one, all thanks to you. He's like, so let's see which one of us walks away. Because he's feeling pretty cocky, because presumably, unlike General Katana, he's got about 4 centuries of sword fighting experience under his belt at this point, and was good enough to win against the Kurgan and everyone else. So, you know, General Katana probably not so much. So yeah, so amidst this stupid plot, we have Connor and another scientist erected an energy shield around the Earth because the ozone layer was depleting. You can tell this movie was made in the 90s. And Virginia Madsen's character has figured out that in all likelihood the ozone layer has repaired itself, so they need to bring down the shield because the shield sucks. And the guy who runs the SHIELD Corporation obviously didn't want that, because he's like the most powerful guy on Earth, because he runs the SHIELD Corporation, the thing keeping everyone alive, supposedly. So she wants Connor to help her bring it down. After Connor kills, I think, the first of the 2 immortals that get sent, he calls out for Ramirez. Now, in the opening of the movie, it showed that him and Connor did the magic ritual, so they're connected. Well, part of it was the whole, like, we're connected beyond time and space, you ever need me, call my name. Well, he shows back up, alive, in Scotland, I believe, like where he died. And so, yeah, ends up getting a nice new suit, taking an airplane, all new things for him, and shows up. Then him and Connor go to bring down the shield and deal with Katana. And basically, from what I understand from looking around, a lot of this was because God, I can't keep forgetting his name. Christopher Lambert became real good friends with Sean Connery. He's like, hey, if we're gonna make the sequel, like, we need to bring him back too. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure that out. So they did. So yeah, so they go to the SHIELD headquarters, not the one run by Nick Fury, and like they get trapped in a room with a big spinning fan, and Sean Connery is like, well, Highlander, you can summon all your life's moments into one little thing. And he like reaches up, and some bagpipes with Amazing Grace starts playing, and magic energy starts flowing out of his hand, and he stops the fan, and he's like, oh, it'll take the power of the 2 of you to take down the shield. Now, I don't know if he meant him and Katana, or him and the woman, or who the hell he meant, but it's going to take 2 of them. And even though if he would have let go, he would have been able to like easily get out of the room, he just like, you know, it's like, it's my time. He just deadpan stands there as the fan crushes him. So then Highlander goes and fights General Katana in the main shield control room and kills him, and steps into the beam as the quickening occurs, and he brings down the shield. So, as a movie, aside from that bit at the beginning that doesn't make any damn sense, whether they're from an alien planet or from the past, if you gloss over that, as a movie, it's not a bad movie. It's okay. You know, probably a 5 or a 6. As the sequel to Highlander, it is not good. Like, first of all, just its very existence is a problem, because there's no way for the story to continue at the end of Highlander 1. Like, the plot's done. This is why they had to do the dumb things that drag down this movie. And that's why this movie is such a disappointing sequel. Because, again, its very existence is almost an affront to the first movie. And then you get into the actual meat of the story, and it's got some problems. Like, the first movie, I'm not going to claim it's like some super tight, everything makes absolute sense, but like, its internal narrative works. The internal narrative here, by exposing some of the things, but not all of the things, and the exposure is a very unsatisfying answer, yeah, Like, we're in not good territory. This is above and beyond midichlorians here. Like, midichlorians, we at least still have some viable fan theories to make all that work. This, no. That's why Highlander 3 and 4 and the TV series just completely ignore this movie. Like it never happened. And for good reason. So now why do I say this is a terrible sequel as compared to, say, the Star Wars sequel trilogy? Well, for one thing, The Force Awakens isn't a terrible movie. It's decent on its own. It's not a good Star Wars sequel. It is disappointing as a Star Wars sequel. And then 8 and 9 are just dumpster fires. And that's part of the problem, because like with Highlander 2, it bounced back with Highlander 3, and it's like, well, you know, this is also silly, but this explanation, like, of how there's still some immortals kind of almost makes sense if you tweak it and look at it right and ignore part 2, because it's like, well, this is better than the explanation in part 2. They course corrected, okay? Then they had the series, which had to do a lot of retcons to make that make sense, and then the fourth movie kind of tries to unify everything. So there were course corrections. There were attempts to answer criticisms. So that's why 2 stands alone. And then 5 is just god-awful. But since 2 had already given you the gut punch, like, by the time you get to 5, you're like, I mean, it's terrible, but we've been here before. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, Highlander 2 is like a masterpiece compared to the source. Like, yeah. Like, if I had the choice of, like, striking one Highlander movie from reality, the source is going to be my bet on that 100 out of 100 times. So, yeah. But yeah, that's why it's just a monumental disappointment, because the first movie was so good. This would be like if The Empire Strikes Back was such a letdown. See, Star Wars had 2 really good sequels. It had the best movie in the franchise, Empire, followed by Jedi, which is still really good. It's got some issues. People don't like the Ewoks, think they're teddy bears, stuff like that, but it's good. And then you have the prequels, mixed quality admittedly, but not terrible, ending on the high note with Revenge of the Sith. And then you get the Disney trilogy, but, well, it changed hands, different writers. Like, you can make, like, there's lowered expectations. And then they actually hit, and expectations really fell. So, yeah. But Highlander 2, it was like, well, where would you even go with this? And then when they gave you the answer, like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have gotten in the car and gone anywhere. Like, we should have just called it quits. We should have taken our own advice. There could be only one. But, yeah. So, yeah, that's my take. It's a terrible sequel. Like, it's really bad as far as the sequel goes. As a standalone, like I said, it's probably like a 5.5, 6, it's somewhere in there. It's not a terrible movie in and of itself. It's just, man, is it a letdown as a sequel. Yeah. Kind of how some people probably felt with, like, Alien 3 or Alien Resurrection. Or maybe Aliens, if you're like, oh man, what are they going to do? What are they going to take this horror franchise? And James Cameron's like, horror? Haha. How about action? And you're like, wait, what? And then after that, like, action. Okay, so where are we going? More action? No, back to horror. It's like, god damn it. So, yeah, it's like that, only worse. A lot worse. So, like, it's worth checking out on its own, I think. But as a sequel to Highlander, it is bad. Like I said, probably 5.5, 6 on its own. Sequel to Highlander, we're talking like a 3. All right, with the source being like a 1, maybe a 0. One bright spot: it does still have some of the soundtrack to the first movie, like bits and pieces here and there, but it's there. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Have you seen this? I know Charboy Beefcake has seen this. He commented on the other one, but, like, feel free to comment again. But anyone else, if you've seen the second one and the third and fourth, like, where do you think it all fits together? Does it fit together? Should it just be burned from continuity? Is it a good thing that everything else just ignores it? You know, let me know on all that stuff. Like, share, subscribe, all that kind of fun thing. Sharing and commenting are the things that help us the most with the channel, and we always appreciate it. But, yeah, other than that, just remember, there can be only one.